Who's looking to learn something tonight? And have a bit of fun at the same time? So you guys are up for some interaction so I can give it my 100%? Awesome, that's great. That's what I like to hear. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about myself, where I'm from, and then I'd like to share with you my journey, the ups and downs, ins and outs of how I actually did it. How does that sound? And then I will give you the magic formula. And following on from that, I will give you some information about the HMO Visit Day I'm organising this Friday. So let's move on. Originally, I am from Mumbai in India, born and brought up in a traditional Sikh family setup. I was the eldest of 4 kids and pretty much lived at home until I got introduced to the charming, the young at the time, obviously, one and only Romi Chopra. And it was literally, from the time I got introduced to him to being married to him, the court of law was 5 days. So, as you can imagine, literally before I knew what was happening to me, I found myself at Heathrow Airport. A new country, new people, new culture. I'd never been abroad in my entire life. So, to say the least, it was daunting and challenging. But I was determined to make a go of my marriage and my work and my career life as well. So with that in mind, I got myself a job, as you do, and things started to change. Financially, we seemed to be doing okay. We had the double income, no kids lifestyle, the Dinks lifestyle back then, and suddenly it felt like a bomb had exploded. Obviously, not really, but I had 2 kids in a space of 2 years, and my life had completely turned upside down. And for those of you in the audience who already have had some similar experiences, you know your priorities and your perspective in life completely changes when you've got children. And a job that seemed great and very comfortable once upon a time didn't seem like that anymore. I started to get really frustrated trying to juggle, the home life and work life and everything else that goes with it. And I started to think, I've got to do something different. I didn't really want to be tied into my 9-to-5 job for the rest of my life. So I started to think about what other options I've got available. And then to top it all up, there was a couple of big things that was going on. So as the kids were growing up, they were sort of beginning to obviously have a voice. And they would say to me things like, oh, why don't you pick us up from school and stuff. And I think that sort of hit a sort of chord with me, because I think growing up, my mum had 4 kids. And there was obviously some financial issues that my dad had. So she had her hands full, and no disrespect, I love my mum to bits. But I just didn't feel like that sort of connection, and didn't feel like she was part of my life growing up. So I didn't really want to miss out on my kids growing up. And I was adamant that I really wanted to be part of their day-to-day life, pick them, drop them, be able to go and watch them, their performances in school and what have you. So. And the other thing that was happening was my job. For those of you who have had experience being in IT, which is where I'm from, at one point the salaries were pretty stagnated. They weren't really going anywhere. And I felt it was the best part of nearly 8 to 10 years where my salary just went up 1 or 2% every year. And at the end of the 10 years, I thought, I don't want to spend the next decade of my life counting the pennies. So I decided that I was going to give that all up. And so we decided to go into property. Now, it wasn't like I went tic-tac-toe and I'm going to do property. We had invested in property, luckily for us, through savings over a period of time, mainly single-lets in London, because that's where I lived before. And when we reviewed our portfolio, we realised we'd done quite well out of it. And even though there were single-lets, because we'd bought it over a period of time, we were making some great rental income. Some of them were on tracker mortgages, so they were giving us some reasonable income out of it. And we thought, well, actually, we're not even putting much time and effort into this. What if we do it full time and do it more strategically and run it as a business? Then there's lots more opportunities out there for us. So with that in mind, I took a sabbatical, and now I'm running my own property business, which is the Smart Property Investor Group, effectively sourcing HMOs and things, and I'll talk about that in the next few slides. So in terms of my own portfolio, we are where we are. We've got 9 properties in total. We had a refurbishment which just completed last month, and we sold that. So that's 10 projects we've done for ourselves so far. Not hundreds, but we only need so many in London, as you know, because the HMOs generate a great deal of rental income and good profit. We've got a good portfolio value, and we've built up a reasonable equity in our portfolio. So my next step is now looking to commercially refinance some of that and reinvest that into property. So we've got a great passive income from our HMOs and single lets that we own. We manage our own HMOs at the moment, and we also manage our rooms for our investors as well. So altogether, we have roughly about 40 rooms that I'm currently managing. And that's where I am in my property journey, and that's growing as I speak. In terms of my business, I've got 3 different things we do within our business. Firstly, I offer investors who are looking for more of a passive investment. So I offer them a hands-free HMO service, primarily in the Berkshire area. So that includes Bracknell, Reading, Maidenhead, all those areas, whereby I will find you the right property, manage the refurbishment for you, and also source you the right tenants. We only specialize in high-end, modern, clean houses for the young professionals. So we don't do LHA, which is what's the other guy's name? Gym Strategy. So that's what we do. And I also do mentoring. So my mentoring is with a focus to financial freedom. So if you're looking to become financially free through property, you're more than welcome to come and talk to me. I do offer a 30-minute free consultation to work out whether I can help you. And if I can, then we can go into more details. And lastly, I work with investors who are looking for a fixed return on the investment, for a fixed term, and we do it all legally through the right contracts and what have you. So if any of this is of interest, then do grab a card at the back of the room, or come and give me your card and I'll send you the details a bit later. So, financial freedom. Would you agree it's probably one of the most widely talked about topics in our industry? Yeah. And rightly so, I think, because it gives you masses of things back. So what's the first thing that comes into your mind when you think about financial freedom? Any shout-outs? Yeah, no day job, exactly. Anyone else? Time, freedom of time, absolutely. And to be honest with you, when I first heard of the whole financial freedom thing, I thought, of a cruise somewhere, or jet set in the world, or, possibly being on a beach drinking champagne. And yes, all of that is, yet to come, and that's what I aspire to do. But I soon began to realize financial freedom is about replacing your income from your job, through some passive investments or through assets, through income through assets. And that's what I set about doing. My target figure was £3,000. That was, I was making roughly about that after tax from my job. So that's what I wanted, and that's what I set about doing. So with that in mind, I started to look at what other options I have. So for me, it's all about spending time with my family and watching them grow and actually living it with them. As I mentioned to you earlier on, I wanted to be part of their lives. So whether it's watching my daughter play hockey or netball, or watch my son play rugby, or watch their assemblies at school, or just picking them and dropping them from school, just being there for them, really. My son had a very big transition earlier on this year where he moved from a primary school to a secondary school. And, for those of you who have kids that age, it's a big transition for them. And you've got to be there for them and, reassure them. And though, it just gives me tremendous pleasure to actually be there for him. So it's the small things for me in life. So, I'm sure you know what financial freedom would give you. So going back to my journey, as I mentioned, it was about around about 2010, where I sort of put my foot down to my husband and I said, look, I've got to do this. I don't really want the kids to just go past and become 18 and then say, bye-bye, Mum, thanks, it was nice to know you. And around about that time, I attended the National Achievers Conference. I don't know if any of you attended that back in 2010. And I heard Robert Kiyosaki speak. Has anyone heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Yeah. Who hasn't heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad? If you haven't, then I recommend you. And it's those concepts that you learn from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, from being, in a job, self-employed, to being an investor, to being a business owner. It's those concepts which you probably know at the back of your mind, but you never sort of, you never sort of focus on those things. So I then ended up taking a sabbatical, and during that sabbatical, I started to educate myself. I did a couple of property courses. And yes, it can be a bit overwhelming, but I had a target in mind. My target was £3,000 a month by the end of the sabbatical. So with that in mind, I know there was very few strategies that was going to give me that guarantee, and I knew HMOs was one of them. So I started to do lots of viewings, get to know the agents, get to know the areas, and I had to do a lot of legwork because I would literally go and view 8-10 properties a day, like probably some of you do, and I would come back and speak to my husband and say, oh, what about this, what about this, and he would go, nah. It was frustrating, trust me. And eventually, I found the right property. In fact, I had to at least research 2 or 3 different areas before I sort of settled down on my gold mine area in Berkshire. And I settled down on this particular property, but it sort of defied the 3 golden rules of property investing, or what I've learned in the courses so far. Would you like to know what they are?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one is buy 25% or more below market value. This had some discount, but it was definitely not 25% or more. Buy something up north. This was in the southeast, in Berkshire. And buy something which is totally run down and add value to it. There was potential to add value in other ways, but this property was completely done up, ready to go HMO. And to me, to be honest, it met my criteria. It was going to make me £1,500 a month net income after mortgage costs and everything else, and I was going to self-manage it. So for me, it fit my criteria, and it was almost halfway there to my target. So with that in mind, we went about financing the deal. I didn't actually have any ready cash available, but we had made a couple of good investments, as I mentioned to you earlier on, so we refinanced that, and we had also sold a property in India which had literally quadrupled in value. So we had some cash from there which we managed to get it back in the UK. So that helped me buy that property, and it was making me some good income, and there was also potential to add value through a garage conversion, which is what I intended to do. And that was all great, but I wasn't quite there, and it was sort of time towards the end of my sabbatical, and it was quite sort of sad for me because I had to go back to work, and I felt like a failure. Although it wasn't like that, in my mind, I felt like a failure, and it, I'm smiling at it now, but back then I wasn't, and it was sort of, eating humble pie, which I did. And I went back to work. Obviously, I was being a bit miserable a few days, and I thought something's got to be done about it. And I went back and started looking at more properties. This time around, I found another deal, which was slightly different, but it had the potential of 5 lettable rooms. It was going to make me well over £1,000 a month net income. And the whole, and I could add massive value to it because it was a probate. It was completely run down, so it needed new heating system, new electrics, the works. So that was great. And again, we managed to use the equity that we built up. So it's the bank's money, as they say, no money down deal. We did that. So what do you think I did next? Because by this time I had the £1,500 plus I had the garage that I had converted as well to an annex, which was making me well over £700 a month rent just from the garage alone, because that was going to a couple, and about £1,000 a month. So I met my target. So what do you think I did next?
You left your job.
Exactly. I resigned back in July 2012. So it wasn't that long ago. It's only about a year ago that I put my resignation in. And it was a great sense of satisfaction. Now I am running my own business. As I mentioned, I'm a full-time investor, and I source properties and what have you. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, how I did it. I would now like to share with you the secret formula. And I think it's a combination of a few things. It's not just one thing, and I can't pinpoint to one thing, but I'll give you some insight into a few things I did during that journey. Would you like to know?
Yes.
Right, so the first thing, what would you do if you're going to go into a new industry or you want to learn something new? Educate yourself. And typically, how long would you spend educating yourself in a degree? 3, 4, 5 years, sometimes maybe more in a medical background. And, that's the right thing I did. So, I would say that's probably the best thing you could do. And yes, sometimes education can be overwhelming because you go to one course and they teach you about rent to rent, then you go to another one, they teach you about lease option, then you go for an installment contract, and you think, oh my God. So it is a bit overwhelming, but it will fall in place. Trust me, that's what happened to me. My whole brain was jumbled up when I started doing the courses back in 2010, and I thought, what the hell am I going to do? But it sort of comes into place. eventually. In fact, what I did was I wanted to help people who've just started, investing in property. And I published a book back in 2012 where I interviewed some very successful property entrepreneurs, and Jim was actually one of them. When I asked them the question, what would you do if you were in a day job? So in hindsight, what would you do, or what strategy would you use to earn £1,000 a month passive income? This is what, they gave me a few strategies, things like rent to rent, installment contracts, and what have you. So it gives you a good overview of many strategies. So if you're looking to buy this book, then come and grab me in the back of the room. And yes, sometimes education can be expensive as well. So you don't have to do all the expensive courses. You can go to networking events like these, educate yourself. And there's obviously the internet nowadays, and there's loads of other low-cost options, CBT and all the computer-based programs that you can do to educate yourself. And I think there is absolutely no compensation for that. You absolutely have to do that. And to be honest, I would swear by networking, because the team that I work with right now are pretty much everybody I've met through networking events in the last 3 years. And I became a prolific network and literally just went to every single event near where I lived and beyond. So if you want to be successful in property, I think you need to go to every single event with an objective in mind, whether that's finding a joint venture partner or finding a deal or, selling a deal, whatever that might be. If you go with a specific objective in mind, I find more than often those objectives can be met. I can't stress more the importance of having a mentor. And I think it can literally jumpstart you to success, because not only are you accountable to your mentor, the mentor will, you also buy into their experience, and that's what you're really paying for, to actually, because they've obviously been through all their hoops, and they're trying to, go through, obviously save you from going through those hoops. They will motivate you, inspire you, coach you, and I think, so yeah, get yourself a mentor if you really want to be financially free really quick, like now. I didn't have a mentor straight away, but I do now, because I realize and understand the value of having one. Create a mastermind group. If you've got 3 or 4 people around you locally, meet up once, I don't know, however often you want, weekly, fortnightly, whatever it is. I found that very useful, because when I went in, I started, there was a group called LIPS, funny, strange name, but it stood for Ladies in Property. And I met a few sort of, property experts sort of thing there. And, when you meet them, you realize it's, it is hard out there, it's challenging, but you've got to just keep going. So I think those are the tips I would give you. In terms of mindset, I think it's very, very important to have the right mindset, and you have to work at it. It doesn't just come, you don't just wake up one day, believing in, oh, I'm going to be financially free, or I'm going to make £10,000 a month, or whatever it is that you want to believe. You have to work at it. And I can give you a few tips on what helped me. Primarily it was 2 things. Who's read the book Think and Grow Rich? And who hasn't read the book? But if you haven't, I would thoroughly recommend you either read the book or get the CD for it. Because I would literally listen to that CD every single day, going to viewings, back and forth. I'd probably listen to that CD at least a good 100 times, if not more. It's got a huge amount of nuggets of information which you can use in your sort of pursuit of financial freedom. And the 2 things I'd like to pick on was affirmations and visualizations, which really, really helped me, and they still help me. Now, affirmations is something, so what I would say is you're stating in the positive something that's already happened. So I would say it's July 2012 and I'm making £3,000 a month net income from my HMO properties. I would be very specific about times, dates, figures, and visualizations. I'll give you a quick example of something which happened to me in my personal life. And as I mentioned to you about my son, last year he gave the 11 plus exam. I'm not sure if you have it in this part of town, but it's where when you move up to grammar schools. I don't know if any of you have heard of the grammar school system, but in Buckinghamshire, where I live, you have the grammar school system, and you have loads of different grammar schools which are selective, and you have to give an exam and what have you. So when we went and toured all the schools, we had a particular school that we really wanted our son to go to, which is the Royal Grammar School in High Wycombe. And technically, it wasn't in our catchment area. But we were adamant, me and my husband, that we wanted my son to go there because we know what it would give him, and a great education, or great all-rounded education, as it were. So we put that school as our first choice. You get 6 choices to put in from the county, and I put it as my first choice. And everyone said to me, actually, you're not going to get the school. You can put it as your first choice, but nobody in your area would get the school. So anyway, so we put the application in, and lo and behold, in March, a few months ago, we got the school. And everybody was like, what the hell? You know, flabbergasted. I would visualize every single day him walking into that school, you know, from his, you know, getting off his school bus and walking into that school, and it works. So it might sound a bit weird to me or to you, but it works. And sorry, I'm going to have to move on because I've only got a few minutes left. But another thing that really helped me was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Who has read that book or had that CD? I thoroughly recommend that book. It's a great book. It helped me manage my time, and it helped me become, you know, extremely proactive in my sort of pursuits. So if you haven't read that book or have that CD, get the CD version if you don't have time, and listen to it in your car and on your journey. So, and there's only the 2 things I have time to pick on, but I would definitely strongly recommend you to go back and listen to that CD if you haven't already. You've got to look at your own gold mine area. As I mentioned to you, I researched a few areas before I got my own gold mine area. You've definitely got to be within, I would say, 40 to 45 minutes driving distance, because I didn't really want to go up north or somewhere in the Midlands and drive 3 hours there and back, and, you know, all of that, because I didn't want to leave one job and get into another. So that's very important. I'm sure that probably, you know, your time, you need to value your time. You know, having got access to funds. If you've got access to either, I don't know, equity you built up in your own home, or your parents have unencumbered property who you can work with. If you've got some access to any joint venture finance, be it through friends or family, you know, you can do the work and use their money, then fair enough, then you can buy and, you know, control it. Or if not, then you have loads of different no money down strategies. So look at lease options or rent to rent, and there's plenty of other creative strategies that you can use. But the bottom line is you've got to, you know, you've got to pick one to start with, and then expand as and when time permits. And yes, direct marketing is great, going directly to vendors, leafleting and what have you, but don't be afraid of going through agents. Over 95% of the properties in this country are sold through agents. So don't feel afraid to say, oh, I'm going to get a deal through an agent. It's not a bad word, you know. Do you want to invest passively? Then fine, look for joint venture partners. But if you want to be in it full time, then decide. Either way, you decide what it is that you want to do. You decide, this is my strategy and this is what I'm going to stick to start with. I think you need to focus on 1 or maximum 2. And for me, quantity was definitely not the thing. I didn't want 100 properties, for sure. 10 or 20 HMOs for me, high-end HMOs, making me a couple of grand from each property, 20 grand a month. That's my target. So, you know, you need to work out what is it that you want. If you want the quantity game, by all means, go for that, but you need to decide what game you're going to be playing. Sorry, I'm rushing a little bit, but I've got limited time. You've got to do the legwork. For example, I was going to put in a lot of, be it the bank's money, into these HMOs, so I had to be goddamn sure that there was a demand for rooms in those areas. You've got to research your strategy, whether that's HMOs, lease options, or what have you. I would give out dummy adverts in spareroom.co.uk or Easy Roommate or Gumtree. I'd go and pose as a tenant to see the competition. You've got to know what your USP is. What's your unique selling point? Mine is high-end professional HMOs in Berkshire. What's your USP? You've got to think about that. And lastly, you've got all this mindset. You've got the, you've got the education, the knowledge, but without massive action, I think it's going to be pretty impossible to do it. And I like to use the analogy of skydive. You've decided to do a skydive just like you've decided to go into property investing. And at first, it's great. It's exhilarating, it's exciting, and you think, wow, it's a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And as the time comes by and you start doing some training and a little bit of self-doubt starts to kick in and you think, am I going to be able to do this? And you start worrying about it, you start getting fearful. And eventually you've come to the day when you've got to do the skydive. Now you go into the training room and you're getting your kit on and everything, and all the excitement and action, the exhilaration is now gone out of the window. All there is a bundle of fear. And excuse my French, you're probably shaking your pants thinking, what the hell have I let myself into? And all that education and all that positive stuff that was at the beginning of it has actually gone out of the window. So you're literally a ball of fear. You somehow manage to get onto the plane. You're sitting here completely engulfed with nerves. And what are you going to do? Are you going to actually sit on the fence? Or are you actually going to make that jump? you're going to regret for the rest of your life if you don't actually do that, right? So all I would say to you is